The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
What season are we in?
Why are you putting me on the spot now? I wasn't expecting that.
Is it season 11? It is, isn't it?
It's season 11, and we are back after a month of illness and chaos. You know, we wanted to take the month off to kind of regroup and celebrate, you know, peace and quiet during the holidays, and then we both got sick.
We both got sick. I think you got me sick. I think again.
Here we go again.
Here's the truth. So the last time you got sick, we did a podcast during that time, and then I got sick. And I'm pretty sure that happened again.
Well, how about when I got COVID and then you got COVID right after?
That's what I'm talking about.
I know. I don't know.
This is twice now. Are you healthy enough to be around me? Because maybe we shouldn't be doing this podcast.
Maybe we really are even more, what's the word that I want? Connected. Than we think we are. I don't know.
Well,
but
maybe it's time to end this friendship so that neither one of us gets sick again.
After 4 whole years, we're ending the friendship. That's it. Bye.
Bye.
So, otherwise, I hope everybody had a really nice month of December. Wonderful holidays, whatever you celebrate. I didn't do a whole lot except sleep on the couch and eat Chinese food on Christmas Day.
Are there restaurants around you that are open on Christmas Day for Chinese food?
Yes, we do have some.
I want to start that tradition too, but I have to find the right Chinese restaurants.
Well, we tried a new one this time, and it was an actual Asian restaurant. So they had sushi and they had Asian, Chinese food, all that kind of stuff. It was very good, but it wasn't the normal place that we go to. Like, I don't want to say hole in the wall, but the normal Chinese restaurants that you go to. We have one that we have been going to for,
Why did you change then?
20 years. Well, we wanted to try something different, and Dave had a coupon that was good on Christmas. I know, I see the look on your face, and I kind of am laughing too. And my father we got my father some stuff and dropped it off at his house because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't going to my brother's for Christmas. And so he wanted Chinese food. We wanted Chinese food. So we went to the restaurant, and while it was very good, it just wasn't the same. And I feel kind of disappointed because I only eat Chinese food one time a year because it's not really that good for me, especially being diabetic. And I kind of blew it that time.
Yeah.
So, I may have to halfway through the year just, go for the regular Chinese food.
Do Christmas in July or something like that.
I know. So, it is what it is. But it was good, though. It was good. It just wasn't the same kind of thing. And then New Year's Eve, I did absolutely nothing. Spike and I and the cats all laid on the couch and just watched TV because Dave was DJing a New Year's Eve party. So we were just hanging out, and that was nice.
Do you guys have... They're called Panda Express. They're the fast food.
I know what they are.
Okay.
Because they're in every airport I ever go to.
Okay.
But we don't have any.
Okay. So, we have them in Appleton, Green Bay, blah, blah, blah. But we never had one in Oshkosh until just recently.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're not, listen, it is the fast food of Chinese. I understand all that. I get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now there's one in Oshkosh. So very excited about that. Did that on Christmas Eve and then had those leftovers on Christmas Day. But I would like to do an actual Chinese restaurant kind of thing on Christmas Day, but I just have to find one that's open. And
it's hard to find anything open on Christmas, really.
And understandably,
Chinese
right?
Places are the only places that you can really kind of count on.
Yes, but I think they're usually only in communities with high Jewish population, because that's what Jewish people do on Christmas Day is have Chinese food. They do. Yeah. I mean,
seriously.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm married to a Jewish guy, so I've kind of become Jewish over the years a little bit just because. And, but I think that I have to say that Jewish people are like really kind-hearted, nice people who kind of envelop the community with love. That's my experience. And over the years, I mean, Dave and I have been together like 21 years. I love the Jewish traditions and how cool they are. And so his brother used to be a VP at a huge publishing company. And for Dummies books. And, I actually got a Judaism for Dummies book years and years ago, and it was super interesting. So not to get off on a tangent, but yeah, a lot of Jewish people, like, they have Chinese food because they don't really celebrate Christmas.
So I would always watch Don Rickles.
Oh, yeah.
Was one of my favorite comedians. And he was Jewish, and he would always talk about Chinese food on Christmas Day and all that kind of stuff. And then now there's a great comedian out there. Her name is Jessica, I think it's pronounced Kirsten. Mm-hmm. And she does really great. She's Jewish, and she does great Jewish impressions, and they're just great. But she also was talking about, like, somebody asked, like, what are you doing on Christmas Day? And she goes, like every other Jewish person, I'm having Chinese food. That's what we do. So I think there's more Chinese restaurants open on Christmas Day if the community supports it. And I'm sure in Oshkosh we probably have enough to support it.
Yeah. You know what's interesting though, Todd? And then we can move on. But what's really interesting is we were thinking of actually doing Chinese food on Thanksgiving as well this year, just because we didn't have anything going on as usual for Thanksgiving either. And we could not find a Chinese place open on Thanksgiving. But they're open on Christmas though. I
think that's why, right?
Right.
There's an audience for that food that day.
Exactly. And everybody's kind of thankful these days, I guess. So we're all thankful to just be here, I guess. So, oh, Lordy. Yeah. So that was it. Feeling a bit better now. Still have that kind of cough tickle in my throat, but I'm
still very tired. I could go to sleep right now.
Me too. When we're done today, I'm going to go lay down on the couch and maybe take a nap.
Yeah, I'm going to probably go to bed for a little bit.
You guys should see that on video. That was really entertaining.
So what's this season all about?
Well, this season we are going to talk. Well, first, I have to tell you guys just really briefly this cool thing that happened to me. So for years and years and years, I'll be 53 next month. For years and years and years, there is a certain road that you can take, Route 5 between Utica and Herkimer. And a lot of people go on it. It's not the thruway or, the interstate. It's just a regular Route 5 road. And ever since I'm telling you, no exaggeration, like 4 years old, there's an old house on this road that I have always been just absolutely fascinated with, almost obsessed with. And I used to call it the Casper the Friendly Ghost House, because if you watch the Casper the Friendly Ghost cartoon, you can it looks a little bit like those house that Casper and the ghosts come out of. And so I've always loved it, but it's always been a huge mystery to me. I've never even known where to start because it's so dilapidated, and it's just, it's a house that looks like, it's so weather beaten. It looks like a house that's going to fall over if you sneeze. Right? And so there was never any way of really knowing anything about it. So today I wake up and on my Facebook feed, a friend of mine, someone on my friends list, she forwarded a post from a page that I actually belong to called Abandoned New York. And there was a picture of the house. And as I read through the comments, I literally got the history of the house. And I thought, oh my God, well, here we go. You know me, I'm a researcher. I have to know about this. And there wasn't a lot of information, but there was enough. And so through being able to, and again, and we'll talk about this a little more into the season, researching, but through findagrave.com, I was able to locate the owner of the house who built the house, his son who lived there, his son's second wife who lived there, and their son, the original owner's grandson, who built a house across the street and lived in the house.
Oh.
And that's just the beginning. But I actually have names of these people. And everybody knows how personal everything is to me, especially when I research. I have never been more excited. I don't even know the last time I was this excited. I actually have been able to figure out at least some of the history of this house. And I'm so happy about that. So there is definitely something to be said for paying attention to detail, doing your research. As soon as you even get a little inkling, you can turn it into, from a seedling into this huge tree.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's just so great. I was like so excited. So anyways.
I think you're really reaching on that one, but okay.
Well, you can really go down the rabbit hole on a lot of this stuff, So I actually found out where they're all buried. So of course, Dave and I in the spring are going to go visit the two cemeteries where they are and see if we can talk to them. Because of course, history is actually a great trigger object when speaking with people who have passed on.
Yeah.
So the more I can find out, the better. So I'll have to dig into my ancestry, my heritage site and see what else I can find out about them. So they had, ironically enough, the original owner of the house had like 12 children, and the majority of them passed before they were 12 years old from different illnesses.
Yeah.
So
I think in our time period, we forget how hard it was for people to live past a certain age and get through childhood. A lot of kids died back in the day.
There weren't a lot of people who lived into their 70s, 80s. Rarely did you see a 90-year-old person. But
a lot of children, like before they hit 21, had died.
Passed.
Yep.
They passed on. There was just not the medical knowledge then, the ability to take care of these people. And a lot of people question the reason why there were so many, his first wife, second wife, third wife, fourth wife. Well, when you were having children that survived and your wife would die at a young age or die at any age from some sort of illness or disease, somebody had to take care of the children, because back in those times, the men were obviously the people who farmed the land or made the money for the family. And so there had to be somebody to take care of the children. And so they would find somebody that they cared about and they would just marry them. Sometimes they didn't care about them. They would just marry them to have somebody to watch the children. And there were a lot of arrangements back then.
Yeah. And I also think that there's probably a lot of crime that went down that never got solved or never got even realized. People, killing off their spouses and shit like that.
Oh, yes. Well, we know the story of Roxalana Drews in Herkimer County, New York, who was convicted and hung for murdering her husband.
Yeah.
Although she was caught. But But that's a whole other episode because I have my own theories on that. So anyways,
Right.
so recently I watched this season is going to be a neat season. Recently I watched a series of very, very high level classes that Amy Bruni from Kindred Spirits did on a website called Momentous. And while it was very, very high level, and you and I have been investigating for years, and we have a lot of experience and experiences and everything, I did find it interesting that she was giving such a high level one, and it kind of inspired me to say, Todd, let's do a little bit of almost like a ghost hunting 101 type of season. Let's talk about all of the different things involved in ghost hunting throughout the season with some examples and some stories and tips and tricks and methods for ghost hunting. So if you've never ghost hunted before, or if you're just starting out and you would like to start ghost hunting, but you're not really sure where to start, how to start, what to do, then I think this season is for you. And so we're going to kick off the season, Ghost Hunting 101. I think that's what we'll call this season. I think that's kind of cute. And we're going to talk about all kinds of things like equipment, EVPs, research, types of energy, types of hauntings, protection, human versus non-human spirits and entities, all kinds of fun stuff. So I thought we could kick off this episode with a sort of, what do you do if you want to start? What are some do's and don'ts that you and I have learned along the way? And there's quite a few of them. We're not going to go too deeply into them unless somebody wants us to. We can talk a little bit more about those in future episodes. Just contact us. All of our info is in the show notes, and also in you can check out our group, Friends, Stay Weirdos, Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast. We have a lot going on there, including a brand new Crystal group, Crystal Crew Chat, that you can be a part of if you're in the group. And that's going really, really well. We're all having a blast talking about different crystals, showing everybody our crystals, asking questions about crystals, and getting advice. So it's a really neat thing. So, all right, Todd, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one that I have is never go alone, because it's a safety issue, especially when it's an old building and you've never been there before and you're not sure about anything. One thing to always remember is it is a safety issue. And you don't want... Now, cemeteries are a little bit different. If you're going to go to the cemetery and speak to your grandmother or your father or your aunt, it's okay to go alone. That's not a safety issue. But I just think about the house that I was just telling everybody about. Somebody in the post said, in the thread said that they had gone there maybe 10 years ago. They weren't supposed to go there and fell through the stairs.
Yeah.
And I just think, what if she wasn't alone? What then? What happens to you then? So that's always like a big consideration, is try not to go alone.
I always think too, from the experience standpoint, when you go alone and you have experiences, that's great, but there's nobody else to kind of back you up on that. And
right.
And whether or not you're good at debunking or thinking of other things that it could be other than a spirit or an energy or a ghost or whatever it might be, it's always nice to have somebody else have that same experience, so that you have the feeling that, hey, what I experienced was real. Otherwise, I think sometimes you walk away from an experience and you go, did I really experience that?
Yes.
Did it happen the way I remember it happened? What else could it have been? It's two sets of eyes, two sets of ears, two sets of energy are, to me, are just better at backing up the experience.
I agree 150%. You really want to have somebody there with you. A lot of times, even when reviewing evidence, I won't take what I hear or think I hear as solid. I'll ask you, I'll ask Dave, I'll ask, anybody who was involved in it in some way. I love asking you because you're essentially 3 states away.
Right.
So you're giving me a fresh perspective, So it's always good to have more than one person in a location. And think about, too, why do you want to ghost hunt? There's different mindsets, and neither one is wrong. But I think you need to be very, very clear from the beginning why you're doing it. Are you doing it because you think there's going to be a lot of thrill to it? And there most certainly is a lot of thrill to it. But is that your primary reason? Or is your primary reason because you, like Todd and I like to do, you like to tell the story of the people who have passed. You like to keep their memory alive. You love history and you want to keep them alive in a way. That's really important to do, to decide why you want to do this, because I think it dictates how you handle yourself throughout, and it can change. You can start for one reason.
Yep.
And realize I kind of did too. Like in the beginning, before I even realized that I had like abilities or anything, I was just fascinated with the paranormal. And so it was thrilling to me to get an EVP because where is it coming from if it's not coming from someone who's not here? But it's changed dramatically in the past handful of years for me.
Right.
So it's just really important to decide why you're doing it. And again, neither one is wrong, and they can change back and forth, but it will dictate how you handle yourself and the choices that you make. Always have permission when you go to a place. I know there's a lot of urban explorers out there, and it's exciting to watch the videos on YouTube because I've watched them. But you really should have permission, because if something happens and you're not supposed to be there, it's a huge legal issue. Forget safety. It's legal, and you can get in a lot of trouble for going to a place that you shouldn't go to.
Says the girl who was...
I was waiting for it.
Illegally on the land once owned by
Ed
Gein and his family. Yes. I didn't. Now let's clarify that. Oh, no,
Todd.
there's no clarification.
Yes,
it said, do not trespass. No trespassing. Stay off the land.
Yeah, but I didn't do any investigating, and I walked 20 feet past the gate.
You did some investigating, not necessarily paranormal investigating, but you were snooping around.
A little bit. I wanted to see where the house was. I wanted to see. When was I ever going to get back to Plainfield? Although we are going to go back someday. But when was I ever going to get back there to actually see where Ed Gein's house was? So
I just love it when you give advice and then I can immediately come up with something to.
But in all honesty, in all seriousness, a lot of times it's a lesson learner. And that's why I came up with that one, because you really should be careful. Now, we were out in the sticks, and I don't know. I wasn't in a physical building or something.
Right.
You guys were bitching at me from the car.
Yes,
I was
we
like
were.
30 feet away from you.
But
so
somebody on the land could have set some traps out there. I mean, they could have been trapping animals, and you could have stepped in it and lost your foot. And so, and then you'd be hobbling around the rest of your life. And Dave and I would say, see, we told you no trespassing.
I'll never live that one down. Anyways, all right. Next one. Make sure you educate yourself about a location before you go, because it can really help eliminate urban legends. A great example is the urban legend of what's the one out by you? Bray Road.
Bray Road.
The Beast
of Bray Road.
It's most likely more of a legend than anything else. And, but educate yourself on it so that, you're going into it with a clear mind and you understand, some of the sightings and things like that. Don't just give in to, the ghost of Ichabod Crane walks this cemetery. And if he sits in the chair and, if you sit in the chair and say Ichabod Crane 7 times, you'll die the next day. Really look into the history of the land and of the location so that you're ready, more ready to be able to investigate clearly.
And I will just say, too, I would always encourage using more than one source for your information. A lot of times, if you're looking up a location or looking up a legend or something like that, you might look up, let's just say Ichabod Crane, and you're going to have all these different sources that you could look at online. Mm-hmm. You may come across a couple that seem very similar between the stories, right? You might, because a lot of these websites now, they just copy information from another website and use it. Right. And so if you're seeing sources of information that are so consistent that it's kind of that you're kind of wondering whether or not you're getting different sides of the story, look further. I always say, get 2 or 3 really good different views on a location.
Without a doubt. Now, one caveat to that is that I like to, when investigating a place, I tend to not want to do a lot of research beforehand because of the fact that I like to go in cold, because of the fact that I am, I do have medium psychic abilities.
I think that's a different type of investigation because you have abilities. If you're more like me, where you don't necessarily have the abilities that somebody like Sandy has, I think it's best to be as informed as you can be.
I agree 150%. And it also helps too. So, for example, when Dave and I were in Saranac Lake in November, we stayed in an old cure cottage and we did 2 nights. We stayed 2 nights. The first night we were just kind of blindly asking questions and we got some responses. We got some great stuff on the audio that was EVP type stuff. Didn't know any of that at the time, but the second day, I actually did some research and found the name of a woman who had passed away in the house. And the second night, we directly spoke to her and did get a few things in response to what I said the second night. And so even now, next time we go back, we're going to try and stay in the same place. And now I've done my research. So now I can go back with certain names and places and words and noises that might actually be used as trigger objects to see if we can learn more of their story. And so that's super important. So I kind of sometimes will hybrid and I'll go in the initial time cold, but then I'll do my research right after to see if I can confirm what I've gotten, or not only evidence-wise scientific, but my reading-wise. So just make sure you're educated on the location. And if it is a bigger location, I know for our apps team, when we did the old sanatorium in Saranac Lake last winter, we actually had a meeting with the layout of the buildings so that we knew ahead of time what to expect and where. So just be educated on what you're doing. Be professional, whoever you work with, whoever is setting up this location for you. Make sure you're professional. Know how to work your equipment before you get out in the field. Like literally practice your equipment. I know that sounds like so basic, but you don't want to take new equipment that you've never used before to a location without at least understanding how it works and what to do with it and what to expect. That's a big one.
and make sure that your battery's all charged. I mean, those are basic bits of information, but you know this. If let's say you take your Mel meter out, which also has the EMF on it, but it's also got the REM pod and all that. When you don't use it for several months, sometimes you're not as schooled on it as you should be. So get it out a couple weeks ahead of time.
It's funny because
and check it out again.
That's happened to me.
Me
well,
too.
It happened to me in the beginning when I first got it, but I am like a stickler of before I do anything, whether it's cemetery, whether it's full on investigation, I always get every single piece of my equipment out, make sure it's charged with the USB, or it has fresh batteries in it ready to go. And it's usually the night before, so I know it's not sitting at all. And I can't tell you how many times something has drained my batteries, and it wasn't me. So always bring extra batteries with you. Go in fully charged, fully batterized. I don't know what the word is. And make sure that you bring extra ones too.
I want to throw one in here that may not be on your list.
Okay.
But don't feel like you're going to go into a location, especially one time, and walk away with a ton of answers.
No.
It's just not going to happen. I feel like locations need multiple visits. You go, you learn something, you go back, you use the knowledge you've learned to learn something else. But the other thing is, please, and this is something that really bothers me. I really dislike it when people walk away from a paranormal investigation. Well, let's say they've received some sort of evidence, EMF, they've seen shadow figures, whatever it might be. And then they say, well, this was so-and-so, and they are doing this and blah. We don't really know.
We don't know.
We don't, unless that energy says their name fully and you want to believe whatever came across 100% that that's what it is. We don't know for sure. We can speculate that we believe it's something.
Right.
This is what we saw and this is what we think it may mean. But I hate it when investigators go, well, here's what's going on. Blah, 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 blah. And then we did this and now the spirits are all gone. I hate that.
We're never going to be 100% sure. I did an investigation. I've mentioned it a couple of times. Did an investigation in August at a tavern. And I have a lot of stuff going on at once when I investigate for me. I love to use the scientific equipment, but I also use my abilities and how I feel. And I try to make them work together. I use one to confirm the other. But even I can leave a location pretty sure because of those two things of what's going on, but I can never be 100% sure. I can never give 100% detail of what's going on. I can feel things. I can get them confirmed by scientific equipment. But at the same time, I don't know for sure what's going on. I can only have an idea of what's going on. And again, unless a gentleman, like the gentleman that I felt in the tavern and, you take it into context, unless he walked up to my recorder or whispered in my ear, my name is, John Smith, I'm not going to know. And unless I can confirm that through research, John Smith is just another name.
Yeah.
And so you really have to be very critical of your evidence. You have to really understand and look at it as the whole picture that you have some amazing, cool stuff, but is there enough to tell the story? And if it tells a story, is it the story that actually happened?
I mean,
that's super important.
Think of humans themselves. Like you could meet someone right now and they could tell you that their name was Larry Johnson and they owned a string of hotels across Western New York State, right?
Right.
That's great, but that person could be lying.
Right.
And if you automatically believe everything you see, hear, smell, blah, 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 I mean, you're just setting yourself up. It's great to feel like you've had the experience that other people have had and that it links somehow with the stories that have come from that location. That feels really good. But the truth of the matter is, and let's talk really briefly about that great episode of Kindred Spirits where they went to a location and there was a story about this little boy that would show up in the mirror, right?
Yes.
And so they didn't have any knowledge or any history to back up that this little boy ever existed. So they went and they actually put information out into the universe about this little boy. They made up a story about his father, about his mother, about all this stuff. And in the responses they were getting back later when they investigated, that information was coming through. So you don't know. Basically what you're saying is when you investigate, I had this experience, I had that experience, we saw this, we heard that, blah, 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 blah. It may mean this, but it could also mean that.
Exactly. And I think it's healthier to go into a situation understanding that everything that you think it is just that. It's what you think it is.
Yep.
During that investigation last winter, we were on the 3rd floor of one of the building where the nurses lived, and everything pointed to the fact that we were indeed very strongly communicating with the head of the nurses. But we don't really know that for sure. We didn't get any names. We just had a conversation with the equipment going off. So can I say for sure that that's who it was? No. Do I think it probably was? Yes. But you have to look at it that way. You can't assume anything. You cannot jump to conclusions. You can't assume anything. Now, what I would do after that, and we may be going back at some point in the future, is do a little research into who some of the nurses were.
Right.
And next time we go back, actually call them by name and see if there's responses that way. But again, we don't know. This is all just, it's not a very
exact
kind of thing. Good word. That's the word I was trying to think of. It's not an exact thing. It's look at the big picture, take into account everything, look at it in context, and then determine your thoughts on it. But we can never really say 100%. And Amy and Adam from Kindred Spirits will tell you this too. They don't really know what's going on. They don't know for sure what it is. They only have their own experiences. And they've had some pretty amazing experiences,
right,
as have you and I. I mean, I've had experiences that no matter how hard I try to debunk them, I just cannot do it. I just cannot do it. And they leave me changed because they change the way that I look at everything. But I still can't say 100% that this is what actually has happened and why. So that's an amazing point. And don't get discouraged if you go and nothing happens right away.
Oh my God. For years, I investigated with nothing happening. Years.
My God. You know, the shows that you see on TV are 42 minutes long, but sometimes those are 3, 4, 5 days worth of investigating to make 42 minutes. There is a lot of sitting around and being bored and getting zero response for all the stuff that you do. So you have to really be patient, and you have to understand that, it's not going to happen right away. Sometimes things don't happen. And sometimes, we've gone to places where it's been very quiet and not much has happened. in the moment, maybe we'll get back and we'll go through some audio or video and see some stuff. But in the moment, you know, a lot of people assume that ghost hunting means we're going to see the white lady walk past us and, you know, we're going to hear this and that. And that's just not the way it always works.
Yeah.
You know, I did see kind of a white lady. I saw a torso once, which was pretty amazing, but that's rare. It's more common to sit there in the dark and have nothing happen than it is to, you know, have all kinds of spirits touching you. And I'm always a little suspect of people who get touched all the time and who, because I'll tell you what, I have done so many investigations. I have been in so many situations, and I don't think I've ever, I take that back. In that investigation in August, I do believe that I was either shoved or this male spirit did go through me, because I all of a sudden got dizzy and almost lost my bearings. So he either shoved me or he went through me. But other than that, in all of these years, I have never been touched. I have never had anything like that. Ever. I've never had anything whispered in my ear. I have never had anything. And I've had some cool stuff, but I've never had that happen. So
and
those kinds of things are pretty rare.
People who investigate and they say they're constantly being possessed by evil energy.
Yep.
Watch out for them too.
Yes. Because, and we'll get into this more in the season, but the chances of possession or demons or evil is very rare. It happens, but it's extremely, extremely rare. And so for something to take you over on every episode is probably not really happening. I'm just going to burst some bubbles. It's just not really happening. Things can follow you home, and we'll go into that too this season. But chances are, you're just, at the most, you're probably going to encounter a grumpy spirit. So, and if you were grumpy in life, you're grumpy in death. And so that's probably most likely what you'll experience. So just a few odds and ends. Never, never, never go into an investigation after drinking or under the influence of any kind, because that can severely not only jeopardize your own safety, it can jeopardize everybody else's safety, and it can skew your perception of everything that's going on. So that's a huge no-no. Always know where your fellow investigators are and what they're doing, because that can also play into false evidence. What do I suggest? I suggest, as far as starting out, a lot of people will say start with groups, go on a group ghost hunt. You can actually, a lot of historical societies have been doing them as fundraisers. We actually put one on for apps a few years ago for the 1834 Herkimer County Jail. You can do that. You can go to some of these really well-known haunted places where they do paranormal investigations. I think it's a nice idea just to kind of get your feet wet and understand. Go with a group, a paranormal group that's seasoned, that has a good reputation, that's been around a lot. Again, I don't recommend going by yourself anywhere, or, you know, even just two people who have never done it before, because I think that you really need somebody with experience to sort of show you the way. Cemetery is a little bit different. Like I said, if you want to go talk to your departed loved one, that's a different thing. But I would just recommend maybe starting out with a group or someone who has experience to kind of guide you and show you the rights and wrongs. So just some do's and don'ts, some things to think about when you're starting out. I know there's a lot of don'ts on there, but I think the biggest do is just to have fun and enjoy it, and understand that it's all about learning, and it's all about carrying on history, and keeping names alive, keeping people alive, even if in name only. And when you go into a place, Todd, I know you like this one, be respectful.
Absolutely.
Be respectful of who you're talking to. Introduce yourself. Tell them why you're here. One thing I found is that in the places that I've investigated that I know have not been investigated before or very rarely before, it's even more important because they're not going to have any idea why you're there or who you are or what you're doing. And you can explain things to them a little bit better. And think outside the box when you ask questions. When you talk to them, ask them questions that might have more to do with their time period rather than, why did you die? Or do you know you're dead? I mean, those are questions that are great questions, but they get asked a lot. And I think that if you're in it to learn and to keep some memories alive, that they'll respond much better to things like that than they would, how did you die? Or do you know you're dead? So just some do's and don'ts, some considerations to kick off season 11.
Love it. I think I'm sitting here, and as we're doing this, I feel like I need to take I need to take a nap. I'm starting to fall asleep. My head's starting to pound a little bit, and I think
you're still getting over being sick. I'm at least like a week or so out, a couple of weeks out. So
all right.
So that was cool. That was a fun kickoff to season 11, and again, Ghost Hunting 101 coming your way, season 11.
Love
if you have any stories, if you have any ideas, suggestions, questions, please get in touch with us. Everything's in the show notes. We have a million ways you can get in touch with us. And we would love to answer your questions or take some of your comments and see what everybody thinks about this. And if you're a seasoned investigator, what are some of your suggestions and your thoughts on this? And we'll be going into, like I said, equipment, EVPs, research, different types of attachments, types of hauntings, protection, the whole 9 yards. So we'll see everybody next week.
Sounds good. Until then, bye.
Bye.